It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew a version 1.0 decklist of the commander in front of us in my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby, ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. As always, I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out the links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're kicking off our second to last week of Aether Drift content. This week is going to be kind of a mismatch of some random things, and then next week we're doing all Transformers, so I hope you guys are excited for that one. Today, for this week, I wanted to take a look at the March of the Machine commander deck that actually set place on Avishkar. Headed up by Gimbal, Gremlin, Prodigy, and the alternate commander was Rashmi and Ragavan. We're going to look at that one later this week, but today we're going to take a look at Gimbal, Gremlin, Prodigy, a 5-mana teamer 4/4 that says artifact creatures we control have trample. And at the beginning of our end step, we make a 0/0 red goblin artifact creature token that gets X counters on it, where X is the number of differently named artifact tokens you control. A very interesting commander in a lot of ways. The Gremlins are really interesting because they grow right for the more tokens you have. Not creature tokens, just artifact tokens. We have a lot of ways we can manufacture different artifact tokens to make sure those Gremlins come in big. They're going to grow right, and when they're made right, depending on how many we have, and then he gives them trample. So we're going to be able to get in for some fun. There's a lot of ways we can approach this, but I think my goal is to make a bunch of artifact tokens. We can use things that copy things to copy our artifact tokens, whether we choose to copy the creature ones to have more of them, or we choose to copy the non-creature ones so we can use some of our ways to animate those tokens to end the game that way. There are a lot of different options, the ways we can take the deck, and so I think our goal here is just to put in a bunch of synergy and have some fun. I want to thank my channel members. Thank you so much for being a member of the channel. If you're interested in giving up just a little bit a month to see all my videos early, that link will be down in the description for you below. But let's get into it. How are we going to make tokens? To be honest, there's really a lot of ways to do this. The goal, of course, is to try to target making tokens that have different names, right? But it's not just about amassing a bunch of tokens with different names. I think we still want to target good effects. We have a couple Saheeli Planeswalkers that can both make tokens. The 4-mana Saheeli makes Thopters, but eventually can -4 to give all of our creatures a buff and have our artifacts cost a little bit less. The middle Saheeli makes a Serbo every time we cast an on-creature spell, and then can actually have an artifact we control become a copy of another artifact until end of turn, which is kind of or another artifact or creature we control until end of turn. Atrix and Nev is going to double up the amount of tokens we're making, which is very important, because it will double up Gimbal's ability, as well as a bunch of the other things we're doing. Brutaclad, I feel like, is one of those creatures that we really want to see, because it can take all of our tokens and turn them into so many things. Beginning combat on our turn, we make a 2/1 mirror, and then we can have all of our tokens become a copy of that token. There's a lot of ways to look at this. I think it's easy just to say, oh, well, get as many Mir or Thopters, whatever you want. But the thing to remember with the Gremlins is the Gremlins just keep their counters no matter what. So I kind of like the idea of making them into Thopters, where they're then in the air and they're going to get all those counters. But truth be told, there's a lot of ways to look at Brutaclad, and I think it just leads us to a couple interesting lines where we get a bunch of really good tokens. The Sea Shark is going to make us Incubator tokens, where X is the mana value of the non-creature spells we're casting. Again, that Incubator can turn over into a Phyrexian artifact creature, again, becoming another named thing. Now, the really interesting part here with Sea Shark with Gimbal is because Gimbal cares about names, that means that the front and back side of that the front and back side of that Incubator token is actually different names, meaning we want to have at least one of each, right, to make our Gremlins bigger. Junkwater can start tapping things down when tokens come in, a nice way to kind of make tokens and tap our opponent's things down to kind of stop them. Peregrine Took says that every time we make a token, we actually make a food token as well, and then we could sacrifice 3 food to draw a card. There's a good engine to kind of get some extra card draw going as we're doing what we already want to be doing. Roxanne gets to make meteorites that deal 2 damage when they come in. and then add a mana of a color, and then she actually lets us add an additional mana whenever we tap an artifact token for mana, which is interesting for a couple other things in the deck. But what's nice is these meteorites are actually going to be really helpful, and she can make one in ETB and attack. I like the Salvager a ton because it comes in and makes a 3/3 golem, and then for 2 mana you can just put a counter on every creature you control and they get trampled. Here's a secondary way in the deck to give all your creatures trampled and spread counters, which I feel like is important as you go. Schema Thief, when it deals damage to a player, you can create a token that's a copy of an artifact they control, which is nice. Get you another named artifact. Sentinel the Nameless City makes a map whenever it comes in or attacks, so a map is another artifact there. Stride Hanger works well if we want to go down the Thopter train. Makes us a Thopter token anytime we would make one or more artifact tokens, and then buffs all our Thopters. Another reason why, kind of going that route with Bruticlad isn't a bad idea. Svella makes an Icy Monolith that taps for mana, and then for 8 mana lets you start digging. Toggle makes a rock every time a land comes in. The rock can deal damage to... it can equip to a creature and allow it to sacrifice the rock to deal some damage. Urza's Command makes a construct, which is probably the best legal target for Bruticlad, turning all of our creatures into these constructs that grow for each artifact we control and turning them to huge threats. That's the I think the token we want to copy the most. But I think the Thopters aren't a bad option getting our Gremlins in the air. Animation Module lets us pay 1 whenever one or more counters are put on a permanent to make a servo, which is kind of nice because we're going to be getting that Gremlin every turn. If we save a mana, we can get servos as well. Clown Car comes in and makes some clown tokens, which again is a good way to get another token for the purposes of his ability. Junk Jet makes a junk token, again getting another way to get another artifact token for Gimbal to make those Gremlins bigger. And the nice part about these random things like junk is we don't have to get rid of them. We can just have them sit there and continue to make Gimbal, making bigger and bigger Gremlins every turn. Retrofitter Foundry lets us turn a servo into a Thopter and a Thopter into a construct. Not the 0/0 growy construct, but a 4/4 construct. So, unfortunately, because they share the same name, that isn't helpful. But what I kind of like is just turning all of our servos into Thopters. So if we have things that make servos, now we can make Thopters out of them, and the Thopters are a little bit better in the fact that they're in the air. Tamio's Journal makes us a clue at the start of our turn, and we can sack 3 clues to go get anything and put it into our hand. A huge ability, especially if we have anything else in the deck that can make clues. Curse of Opulence, you put on a player whenever you attack them, they get a gold token. Gold token is very similar to a treasure in the sense that it gets us a mana out of it, but the important thing is it has a different name, which is exactly what we're going for here. So, okay, we're making tokens. I think with the copy section of the deck, you can look at this 2 different ways. You have things like Saheeli that can actually just make a copy of something that will then be an artifact token, and that means that Gimbal will be able to see it as something else that's named, right, and make us another thing. Or you have things like Doppelgang, which can do that same thing, but also can just copy key permanents and make extra copies of them, which I think is huge, depending on what support pieces you have out, in support enchantments, combat enchantments, other things like that. Doppelgang is such an interesting card, and when you can let it off at the right time, you can potentially just get a great amount of copies of the things you want, or even your opponent's things. For the common good, isn't a bad way to lead into a combat if you had to, making tokens that are a copy of a token you control. Then all your tokens get indestructible to your next turn, and you gain a life for each of them. Could be used to set up a Alpha Strike on the next turn, or just give all your tokens indestructible, get in this turn. Mirage Mockery lets you pay 3 mana to either make a token that's a copy of an artifact creature or a non-artifact creature you control, or you could pay 6 to do both. I just think this is very interesting because making a token of an artifact creature we control basically just adds to Gimbal's number, which I think is the goal. Same thing like Seasonal Weaving. You could do the 2-paw one twice to make a copy of something or draw some cards. I think the goal is take an artifact creature and make a token copy of it, bigger Gremlins from Gimbal. Same thing with, 3 steps ahead. It's a counterspell. It also gives us the option to copy. I think the copy isn't the best thing in the deck, but I think what it does is just helps increase that count by kind of targeting specific things. Esoteric Duplicator says whenever we sacrifice it or another artifact, we can pay 2. If we do, we get a copy of that at the next end step, and then we could pay 2 to sack it to draw a card. There's a lot of ways we could take advantage of sacrificing artifact creatures, and if we did, we could pay to get copies of them. It's maybe not as much of a slam dunk as some other things in the deck, but I think we're trying to build value across any number of random situations we can get into. Mirror works whenever a non-token artifact comes in. You can pay 2. If we do, we get a token copy of it. Again, another thing for Gimbal. And then World Walker Helm. Whenever we make one of our artifact tokens, we make a map as well. So that gives us another token. And we could pay 2 to make a token that's a copy of another artifact token we control. Again, ideally, wanting to just make more copies of our creature artifacts. I think it's going to be easy to make a bunch of gremlins and make things to make the gremlins bigger. But I think one of the other avenues we have to end the game is using either Cyberdrive Awakener or Rise and Shine to just animate all of our non-token or non-creature artifacts into creatures for a big swing. And both of these do that the turn that they're played. Cyberdrive Awakener adds onto it by giving them flying, which is actually a very useful ability. And it just turns them all into 4/4s. Rise and Shine actually just turns them all into 0/0s and puts counters on them, but turns them all into creatures. Again, both of these can be paired really well with, especially Rise and Shine can be paired really well with something like Brutaclad for a fun turn. And then Combined Chrysalis, just giving all of our tokens flying, means that those gremlins are then now in the air, and then we can pay 4 mana to turn maybe spare tokens we have into these beast tokens, which can then, be 4/4s in the air. I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is our most recent shot at Gimbal. We've tried it in the past, but we're kind of updating it. And going into testing, I think we need to see, one, are we making enough differently named tokens? We have things like Bloodforged Battle Axe that can make a copy of itself if the creature it's attached to hits somebody. Legion Extruder comes in and can sack another artifact to make these golems. We do have other things that make golems, I think, but if not, that's another named token. Or do we need more of the copy? Do we need to look at something like Feldon a Third Path, or some of our other creatures that could just tap to copy something? Is that a style of this deck that we want to run, and can we expand that more? I think my goal here was the bracket 2, because I didn't think I could do enough to make it a cruiser effect out of nowhere. I think this is still a battle cruiser, get there over the course of the game, and I think that fits that precon style really well. But let's get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of our playtest is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to determine our best plays, but it's to go through some game scenarios and understand how we build our board state. Here we're keeping a 4-lander with Tamiyo's Journal, Retrofitter Foundry, and Mirrorworks. So at least to make 1 or 2 tokens, we just got to get there. Here we draw a Adrix and Nev turn 1. So we'll get the Foundry down. Turn 2, I don't think there's anything I can do. So we're just going to make that servo, right? Get the process started, get at least 1 in. Turn 3, again, we're just a little bit out of that. So I think we just... I think next turn we probably play Adrix. So I guess we'll just make another servo. I think it would make sense to make the Thopter here, but I think we're okay. Turn 4 here we play Adrix, and then we don't have the mana to tap that, but that's a-okay. And then turn 5 we play Gimbal. Go to the end step, make 2 gremlins, and they're each going to be 1/2/2s, right? We only have 2, but that's a-okay, because I think at the end of the day we're still accumulating value. Turn 6, I like Tamiyo's Journal, I like the Mirrorworks, I like the idea of Tezzeret. Tezzeret could get me a Thopter, so either doing that or putting 1 into this gets me a Thopter. I like Tezzeret just because it gives me the option of drawing, which is another option here. Tamiyo's wouldn't get me a clue until next turn. The Murex could get me a Might this turn if I wanted to do that. I can do the Might and a Thopter, so that actually might make more sense. Get that in and get a Might. Gets me 2 Mights, right? Sack the Servo. Which gets me 2 Thopters, right? These guys can attack if we want them to, but the point is, we're not going to do too much this turn. We're going to make 2 more Gremlins. These are 1, 2, 3, 4s, right? So now we're starting to see this train, right, get itself going. Now the Foundry can turn a Thopter into a construct, so we could get another one this turn. Or, let's see, Season of Weaving can make a copy of something. I can't copy either of these because they're legendary, right? I could draw, I could truly draw 5. It feels like an awkward way to use Season of Weaving. I would still have enough mana to make a construct. So let's try it. Let's just draw 5, I guess. It feels like an awkward way to use the season. And then we just get a Thopter for a construct, attack with our Gremlins, and then go to end step, making 2 Gremlins that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 5 5s, right? Because we added 1 more in the construct. And I think we're there now again, right? Bracket 2, going to be a slower game plan. I think we would have loved to have seen some other pieces here on the front end, but I think we're getting there. And, the mites are also another fun thing to turn our tokens into with Brutaclad, right? To make them poison threats. But let's get into playtest number 2. Keeping a 3-lander with Skyclave Relic. Something that can make copies of itself if we kick it. Peregrine Took, the Sheath Shark, and then Doppelgang. So some interesting options here. We see an animation module there, so that'll be able to come online once we get closer to our... Gimbal coming down. I think here I'll just play the Peregrine Took. I mean, we could play the Sea Shark as well, but the truth is, we're just a little bit off that. Oh, okay, we probably should have played the Sea Shark, seeing the Clown Car. So I think here we just have, 4 mana? Now we could pay 3 and try to hope that we hit a counter on it to go for the module and get a servo. But I kind of wonder if it makes more sense just to go in higher into the Clown Car. Let's go 3 into the Clown Car, and that would mean we get to roll 3 dice. For each odd result, we get a robot. For each even result, we get a counter, which then we can immediately pay for that. So we get a 1, a 3, and another 3? Was that another 3? Yeah, I guess it was just another 3. So we got literally just 3 clowns. Okay. Well, that's okay. I mean, obviously we wanted to leave it up to try, right? And that's a-okay. So Peregrine Took is going to make us food there, which is nice. Would that make us multiple food? Because it says for each odd result? I actually think it might, with how I'm reading it. For each odd result you make a token, would that trigger separately? Let's say it doesn't for the purpose of this playtest, but I think there's a good chance that would actually trigger separately, getting us 3 food. If so, we would, let's just say it does, and we sack him and draw the card, right? We kind of have no reason not to. Getting into this turn, we're just 1 mana off being able to get that Skyclave Relic down. So I think we just get Gimbal down. We can attack with the Clown Robots if we want. We go to end of turn, making a Gremlin, which also gets a food made, and then create a Zem, and then put when we counters that, so it'd be 3 this turn. I believe that would work that way because this is a replacement effect, so it should get made when the Gremlin gets made, even during the resolution of this effect. And so now we come back to our turn. We would have ideally loved to see another land so that we could get that Skyclave Relic or the Brutaclad down. Just 1 onto the Doppelgang doesn't make too much sense, although it could get us a copy of a land. Whirler Rogue could be at us more this turn. My thought, if that's the case, is Whirler Rogue. This opens up the Thopters and a food. We can get the animation module at end of turn to make a servo, but I think we just another Gremlin, another food. Put 1, 2, 3, 4 counters on it this time because we added the Thopters. Sack the 3 foods for a card, and then I think just pay 1 for a servo. Again, we're a little bit behind here this time. I think we're almost there, especially with Brutaclad. So then there we hit our 6th land. We go Brutaclad. Now remember that Warlord Rogue can make things unblockable. Go to combat, I think I just have all of them become copies of the Thopters, right? Be able to attack in the air. Make some attacks, and then, sorry, that makes a mirror, which makes a food. Now they all become copies of the Thopters, right? These guys now get to do a little bit of Thopter fun in the air. And we're working our way right towards just getting even better, right? I think this next turn, now we're at 7 mana, Doppelgang 4. We would need 1 more, right, for the Doppelgang for 2. So maybe just the Skyclave Relic copying the... that could kick it to get those. We're going to make another mirror and another Gremlin this turn, so we do have a chance to do that. Last turn, I don't think we had the mana up for the servo. So again, the tokens are getting there. We're getting the board state set up. We're just missing some of those things that are going to help us get a little bit better into combat. We don't have the tempered steels and that of the world like we would in white for artifact creatures, but we do have some of the things. Well, let's get into playtest number 3. Keep it a 2-lander with Arcane Saheeli for that copy, right? The Salvager, Mechanized Production, another great alternate win con. If we can get a bunch of artifacts of the same names, and then Skyclave Relic. So here we'll play the Bouviac turn 1 since it has to come in tap. Turn 2 we'll get down the Arcane Signet. So here we've got a lot of options on turn 3. I like the Salvager for the Golem. We may need to just play the Relic here since we're kind of down on mana. The question is, what will we do next turn instead? This gets us the Golem this turn and then leads us towards using it on future turns, which is kind of another reason why I like it a little bit more. The next turn, of course, we whiff on a land. Why wouldn't we? I think now we have to kind of get the Relic in. Maybe we attack with the Golem if we have it. Now, there we go. Finally, on turn 5, we get our next land. Now we're at 5 mana. I think we just Gimbal. And then just go for the Gremlin. It's kind of awkward to do it. That land drop really hurt us, but I think we got to kind of work for what we can here. Turn 6, still 5 mana. I like Mechanized Production on the Gremlin. The only problem with Mechanized Production on the Gremlin is remember they come in as 0/0s, so that's going to hurt me, right, more than it helps me. Saheeli could be fun to get some extra copies of the Salvager, right, to get an extra Gremlin charge. We could do 2 for the Salvager this turn, giving them trample. Like we could do this and give these guys both a counter and trample. And then, go to combat and attack. Gremlin still just gets 2, right? Then this turn, Saheeli could copy the Salvager, making us another Golem. And then the 3 mana. This could be something like Saheeli. It could be something like Tago. Could be something like For the Common Good. But I think it's better off just salvaging again. And then go in and attack. This Salvager is going to go away because of Saheeli's ability. But on end step, now we have 1, 2, 3. Because it makes it into an artifact. So now this is coming in with 3, right? A little bit better. And the Salvager goes away. Of course. No more lands. Why would we? I think here we either do the same shenanigans again and just try to keep getting more golems and going that way, or we doppelgang like an arcane signet and just get more mana. It's kind of brutal here that we ran out of the lands, but I think the truth is it's good to see. Maybe it means we need more mana rocks and lands in the list. But I'd love to know, what do you think of Gimbal? Down in the comment section below. I think it's sitting right in the 2 bracket. And again, I think there's some things that can be fixed of it. That's the whole point of the show. I'd love to know what you think down in the comment section below.